Good evening. Welcome to APTN National News. I'm Melissa Ridgen. On New Year's Eve, the BC Supreme Court granted an injunction to allow the company building a pipeline on Wet'suwet'en traditional territory to continue their work. In response, Hereditary Chiefs gave an eviction notice to Coastal Gaslink and said they want all workers off their land. Yesterday, on the one-year anniversary of an RCMP raid of Wet'suwet'en territory, the Hereditary Chiefs said that they are standing firm for their territorial rights and they want the company off their land. APTN's Lee Wilson is there.
At the office of the Wet'suwet'en in Smithers, BC, Hereditary Chiefs came to speak.
There will be no access.
On January 3rd, they gave an eviction notice to Coastal Gaslink to stop work and remove their equipment within a week. That eviction came after the BC Supreme Court granted a permanent injunction to Coastal Gaslink, allowing them to work on Wet'suwet'en land. They said the company had a week to get all of the personnel and equipment off its property. The press conference's timing is no coincidence. Exactly a year ago, RCMP raided the Get 'em Down access point, with 14 people being arrested for violating what was then an interim injunction. Hereditary Chief Namox talked about the force that was used that day.
Well, today marks the one-year anniversary since there was the invasion by armed personnel, the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, to remove our people from our territories. And to us, that's absolutely against the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People. We cannot be removed from our lands. We are peaceful people.
Coastal Gaslink released a statement on the eviction notice from the Wet'suwet'en Hereditary Chiefs, stating that they've been trying to have discussions with Wet'suwet'en leadership and have been turned down. But the company states that they are complying with the eviction except for security personnel. Their letter states, "We believe that dialogue is preferable to confrontation and will delay remobilization near Worksite Accommodation Site 9A, while engagement and a negotiated resolution remain possible. We'll periodically need to visit sites for safety and environmental reasons while accommodation site remains unoccupied." Chief Namox stated that they don't want to talk to the company. It is the government or the head of the RCMP that they want to talk with.
There is no reason for us to speak to Coastal Gaslinks. We do not support this project. What we need to speak to are the decision makers. Coastal Gaslinks is merely a proponent. That's all they are. We need to make the decision makers know that we are the decision makers on behalf of our nation.
Namox acknowledged agreement between elected Wet'suwet'en council members, but says the authority over the land outside of the reserve rests with the Hereditary Chiefs.
Elected bands and chiefs do not have authority on the territories. So when those agreements were signed, they did not take into consideration that the true rights and title holders are the Hereditary Chiefs on behalf of our houses and clans.
CGL posted photos of trees that have been cut down across the service road, blocking access. Chief Namox stated that the fallen trees were cut by the Wet'suwet'en for the safety of his people.
Currently, we do not trust the Royal Canadian Mounted Police because they are under the direction of a corporation, which is Coastal Gaslinks, TC Energy. They proved 1 year ago today that they have a willingness to come in with armed personnel to remove our people from the territory. So the trees are put down for our safety and our security.
The RCMP released a statement that they are seeking to resolve the crisis without police enforcement and want to facilitate a resolution. They also stated they have been in direct contact with the company and Hereditary Chiefs. But there is a fear here that the two sides are once again on a collision course, and events of last year could be repeated. Lee Wilson, APTN National News, Smithers, BC.
Sad news today coming out of Iran, where 63 Canadians are among those killed in a plane crash just outside of Tehran. A Ukrainian International Airlines flight went down just minutes after takeoff. 176 passengers and crew members on board the Boeing 737 were killed. The plane's black boxes have been recovered. The cause of the crash is under investigation. A woman indigenous to Iran who was studying in Canada is among those killed in that crash. 36-year-old Ganimot Asdari was reportedly en route back to Canada. Asdari was a member of the Kashkai tribe in Iran and an advocate for Indigenous land rights. She was in the first year of her PhD at the University of Guelph, where she was studying in the College of Social and Applied Human Sciences. Her supervisor, Professor Faisal Mullah, described her as a firecracker.
She had this incredible ability to command attention, and that was not just as a consequence of her incredible knowledge, like technical knowledge about science and international policy, but also, like many Indigenous people, a really strong narrative about her community, where she came from, the importance of the land to her culture and her spirituality.
Prime Minister Justin Trudeau addressed the media about the plane crash late Wednesday afternoon. He said more than 130 of the passengers were destined for Canada.
In the coming days and weeks, our government will continue to work closely with its partners to ensure that this crash is thoroughly investigated. Canadians have questions, and they deserve answers.
A Mi'kmaq man from the Gaspé First Nation in Quebec's Gaspé region is going public about racial slurs used against his team in a recreational men's hockey tournament. The incidents took place this past weekend during a game between the Gaspé Chiefs and the Chandler Goons. The Chiefs allege a Chandler player called a Chief player the French equivalent of an effing Indian, and that the remark was used again in the locker room area after the game. Gaspé community members have since started a petition asking mayors in the region to adopt a zero-tolerance policy for racism in arenas that currently has just over 3,000 signatures.
Today, the way I retaliate is by going through media and trying to do that for my son at least, because now my son, he all witnessed it, and he's 7 years old, and now he said that he doesn't even want to come and see me play no more. So me, at least, because he's in category novice, I would want him to, play the wonderful sport of hockey that's well known in Canada, and to not worry about, okay, this person's going to tell me this.
To Australia now, where firefighters are calling for a royal commission into the national bushfire crisis, saying there needs to be better preventative measures when similar disasters occur in the future. The calls come as residents across the country count the costs of the latest rounds of blazes. We have this report from National Indigenous Television political correspondent Shawnee Wellington.
Visitors to the historic New South Wales coastal town of Mogo previously described it as a beautiful part of the world.
Half of Mogo is missing, and there's complete devastation down here. I've never seen anything quite like it.
In its place stands the remains of a quiet community. What once was the Mogo Local Aboriginal Land Council building is now reduced to rubble. Homes, buildings and sacred land has been lost, as well as the history kept within them.
There's a whole heap of documents that's been destroyed and lost that needs to be reconstructed, and reconstructed carefully so that we can make claims to get this community back on its feet again.
With around 350 residents, the recovery efforts have begun in Mogo, but the emotions are overwhelming.
We're strong and we're not going nowhere, and to me the support that's rolling in from other towns and even as far away as Queensland is just unbelievable, and it almost brings tears to my eyes.
The professionals on the front lines of the battle have had enough. They're calling for a royal commission into the bushfires. It would focus on firefighting resources, communication protocols, funding and environmental factors.
We need to properly examine all facets of what has occurred this summer. Why has this season been different to the past? We need to have confidence in a body that could be set up to do such work. Only a royal commission will give us that.
The Prime Minister visited the fire-ravaged community of Kangaroo Island today. He previously said he would consider a royal commission once the situation subsides. That still may take some time. The temperature is again set to rise to extreme levels in areas of the country on Friday. Shawnee Wellington, NITV News.
We want to hear what you think. Here's how you can continue the conversation. You can send your emails to news@aptn.ca. You can find us online at aptnnews.ca and on youtube.com/aptnnews. You can also follow APTN News on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram for more Indigenous news. We need to take a quick break, but there's more news ahead. And here's a look at tomorrow's weather forecast starting on the East Coast. We've got 0 and snow in St. John's, 4 and some snow in Halifax. La Grande River, -22, clear skies, same with Inukjuak. Chibougamau, -18 and sunny. Montreal, -11 and sunshine. North Bay, snow, -7 degrees. Sault Ste. Marie, -1 and snow. Thunder Bay, -2 and snowing, same with Wawa, -12 and snow in Kapuskasing. -26 and snow for Puckatawaga, -26 and clear up in Churchill. -11 and snow for Winnipeg, -12 and snow in Brandon. -19 and sunny skies for North Battleford and Saskatoon, -18 and sunny in Swift Current and Regina. -23 and snow for Buffalo Narrows, -31 and snow in Stony Rapids. Welcome back. The government of Nova Scotia is coming under fire for its failure to address substandard urban Indigenous housing in Halifax. Angel Moore reports.
You know, like, I came to the city seeking a life, and I feel like I lost my life.
Chantal Chassé and her daughter live in an apartment run by Taiwak Housing, a nonprofit that manages urban Indigenous housing in Halifax. Her unit is run down, full of mold, and needs repairs. On Tuesday, Chassé attended a government committee meeting where housing was on the agenda. The province has committed $7 million over 3 years for repairs, but no commitments to help Chassé and her daughter in the short term.
I mean, what I heard today was people think that there's no short-term solution. And my question is, like, how can that be? Like, you know, how can we not even attempt to try to come up with a solution? Like, that's ridiculous to me.
Critics like NDP MLA Susan LeBlanc agrees.
If there's public money going into these homes, then we need to make sure that the province is checking up on what's going on, making sure that homes are adequate. Ultimately, if the province is funding the units, then they're the landlord. It's the landlord. So, you know, as a landlord, they need to take responsibility.
Nancy McClellan, Nova Scotia's Deputy Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing, says they are working with Taiwak.
And we are working on an agreement that will see how that work will be, how that money will be dispersed and how that work will be done, and make sure that there's good oversight.
LeBlanc says immediate action is needed.
They are sick. They can't get better. They're living with, you know, one woman told me that she wakes up to dead rodents in her apartment every morning. Like, it's just it's a terrible situation, and it needs to be fixed now.
The funding is expected to be dispersed as soon as the province and Taiwak reach an agreement how to move forward, but no promises have been made on repairs in the near future. Angel Moore, APTN National News, Chipuktuk, Halifax.
Finding bison roaming the plains isn't a common occurrence anymore, but some Saskatchewan First Nations are hoping to change that. They've created a program meant to increase the population of an animal that plays an important role in their culture. Kristen Ajikude has the story.
5 years ago, a herd of 22 buffalo were gifted to the Papicasis Cree Nation by the Lokakoa, a group of Christian Samoan volunteers who called the Balcarres area home. Lima Nanai wanted to return the sacred animal back to the indigenous people to restore hope and cultural identity.
It means more to them than I am. I was just lucky enough to have my friends and come alongside, and we're able to do this for indigenous community.
The herd originated from Ron Steckley, a rancher from Carstairs, Alberta, who partnered up with Lokakoa to donate 22 buffalo to Papicasis.
I knew in my heart that that was the project that I was going to be a part of. There was never any doubt. It was always, yes, this is what I'm going to do.
6 bulls have been used to feed the community for feasts, powwows, and weddings, and many parts of the buffalo have also been used in ceremony.
For century and time memorial, we were part of the buffalo, and the buffalo were part of our life, sustaining and taking care of each other. I've noticed over the years, last few years, a lot of good, positive things happening in the community.
The herd has now grown to more than 90, and it is time for the First Nation to donate the next herd to another First Nation, Zakame Anishinaabeg.
The big bull will go first,
yeah,
and then the cows will follow.
200 years ago, nearly 70 million buffalo roamed North America, but by the turn of the 20th century, they were nearly decimated. The local community made sure they did not miss the buffalo returning for the first time in 2 centuries.
I witnessed a couple of our people in tears to have such a festive occasion.
Felt like my heart was just like a spirit that was coming out.
Reconnecting with the spirit of the buffalo, and we're welcoming this medicine to our land.
In 5 years' time, Zakame will carry the tradition forward and donate another herd of buffalo to another First Nation. This will continue on until the buffalo have returned to North America. Krisanachkate, CTV News, Zakame Anishinaabeg.
That is a story, how you kick off a new year. Speaking of the new year, it was the first InFocus of 2020. Today, we discussed lateral violence and the effects that it has on those who experience it. We also talked to descendants from the St. Madeleine Métis settlement, a relatively unknown piece of history where an entire community was destroyed when their town was burned to the ground to make room for grazing cattle. Here's some highlights from that show.
Yeah, I have a lot of people that you'd say like supported me but didn't. That like a lot of people were waiting for my downfall, pretty much.
You felt that?
Yeah, I really felt that over the years. Well, you gotta have people there to help bring you back up. Like you need to find a support system that works for you, and a lot of people don't have that, so you often find yourself feeling alone. And that's when the suicidal thoughts come in. I know that's because I experienced it.
My dad's story, it was that he went, because at that time when people worked, they took their families with them. They took them all and they came back in the fall. So my dad's, like how he told, like he kept telling everybody these stories of what happened to the people there. When he came back in the fall, he's gone all from spring to all summer long. Coming back in the fall, his house was burnt to the ground already. So he got there with his family, and his dog was running around, so his dog was shot in front of him. So as he said, you need to listen to them talking. I couldn't do nothing. He said they had guns, so it's not a nice story to come home to. And this was the fall already, this is the fall of 1939.
I have ancestors that mean a lot to me, and
I know.
Personally, I got to say personally, and I'm sure it means a lot to Vernon and their families and everybody else. And yes, that's just our history. We can't forget.
It's time for us to take another break, but we still have more news ahead. And here's the rest of tomorrow's weather forecast for the west and the north. Off in northern Alberta, we've got minus 29 and sunny in Fort Chip, minus 23 and snow in Grand Prairie. Minus 17 and sunshine for Red Deer, minus 7 and snow in Medicine Hat. 5 for Campbell River and Topino and rain there, minus 6 and snow in Quesnel. Prince Rupert, 3 and rain, minus 22 and sunshine for Dease Lake. Minus 24 and sunny in Watson Lake, minus 26 and sunshine for Whitehorse. Minus 31 for Yellowknife and Wattie, minus 32 and sunshine for Wrigley. Fort McPherson, minus 31 and clear skies. Same with Colville Lake, minus 23 and snow in Paulatuck. Chesterfield, minus 36 and clear. Arviat, minus 29 and clear. Coya Haven, minus 30, sunny skies. Clyde River, minus 28 and sunshine. Minus 24 and snow in Iqaluit. Welcome back. In Saskatchewan, a new science fiction book was recently released that highlights mental health issues in the future for Indigenous people. APTN's Priscilla Wolf has the story.
When stand-up comic Ryan Moccasin decided to get sober, he took to writing, and the result was a sci-fi novel titled Suicide Empire that was released at the very beginning of this year.
Well, I really wanted to direct my energies to something more meaningful, and I thought, well, I've been reading books a long time, I do comedy writing, I do stand-up. Maybe I can direct my energy to a project where they can explore mental health.
In his year and a half of sobriety, he wrote a novel and had it self-published.
It got released on January 7th. You can find it on Amazon.ca.com. You can find it on Kobo. There's ebooks available online, of course, and physical copies here at McNally's.
No official book launch yet, and it's not distributed across Canada at other bookstores yet. Moccasin says taking a look at his own personal mental health helped him write this novel. Even though it's based in the future, it touches on the current struggles of the Indigenous community.
I think this book is important now because it's shining a light on things that have been bubbling over the years, and especially with Indigenous communities. We see stuff like colonial violence, intergenerational trauma, residential schools. All that stuff is just like sending shockwaves through the communities, which we're seeing now.
Moccasin says his main character, Madeline Hopewell, is Indigenous and is trying to find answers to combating suicide in the Indigenous community in the future.
She tries to find herself in that, working in that system, and she tries to find answers when it comes to issues of suicide in her communities, mental health crisis, depression, anxiety. So it's a pretty heavy read, the book, and there's a lot to unpack, but I just wanted to explore how different societies and communities would approach mental health.
Moccasin says writing a serious sci-fi novel about mental health is a big change for him from writing and performing comedy.
It was like a definitely new territory for me, so the thing that helped inform my novel writing style was reading a lot, reading science fiction, reading books from other Indigenous authors.
Priscilla Wolfe, APTN National News, Saskatoon.
A rare donation dropped off at a Goodwill location in Edmonton has turned some heads. A handmade sealskin coat, which looks to have never been worn, was dropped in the overnight bin at the nonprofit secondhand store. The manufacturer was Holman Eskimo Cooperative in the Northwest Territories. Nunavut was part of the Northwest Territories until 1999, of course. Goodwill is hoping to find the person who handmade it. They plan to give the coat to a place that will respect its history.
So what we did is we contacted the co-op up in Coleman Island, or Lukatook, and we talked to the manager of the co-op there. He said the jacket was valuable and that someone there had handmade it there probably about 50 or 60 years ago. And they could tell by the pattern on the jacket who had made it. They just need to do some research and some digging. And so we're continuing to do that.
A young fan of the Toronto Maple Leafs is getting over a pretty big disappointment on his birthday. Jacob Bertrand is a Toronto fan, even though he lives in Quebec. He was looking forward to a Maple Leafs-inspired cake to celebrate his 8th birthday, but the order seemed to get lost in translation. He wound up with a cake featuring the logo for Maple Leaf Foods. The meat company has now responded, tweeting, "Sorry to see Jacob was disappointed with his cake." They're now offering to send him to a Leafs game with delicious Maple Leaf products. That's a pretty amazing story. That is your APTN National News for today. If you missed today's InFocus, it re-airs here tomorrow morning at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. It also lives on our APTN National News Facebook page. You can watch there. I'm Melissa Ridgen. Have a great night. We'll see you back here tomorrow.